Hello and welcome to Smashterpieces, a casual walk through the history of the Super Smash Bros. Ultimate roster. My name is Joe.
And my name is Matt.
And let's get this over with and talk about some damn Ice Climber.
It's your favorite game.
This game is bad. I was actually telling my roommate last night that this might actually be one of my least favorite games on the planet.
Oh boy, I was really looking forward to seeing you actually have to sit down and play this one, and you stuck it out. You did the whole thing.
I did. We both completed the win condition, which was to complete all 32 mountains.
Which it's actually not as lengthy of a task as it sounds.
Yeah, it took me about 3 hours, and that was with 2 breaks. It took you about an hour and a half, somewhere around. It's not a long... I mean, it's an NES game. I wasn't expecting something super long.
Well, it's also like it's the kind of experience that kind of ends when you're not expecting it to at the same time.
Well, yeah, you finished it without even realizing that you were on Mountain 32.
Yeah.
You didn't realize you were done until the results screen came up.
Yeah, and I think part of that is probably because it's a score attack game, but...
Yeah, there's no actual ending to Ice Climber.
Nor is there supposed to be.
Yeah.
It is just a game where you're meant to play through it and figure out your best score. But there's no fanfare to the final mountain. So it can be a little sudden when you get there. It's like, oh, that's it. Going back to Mountain 1.
It's actually a really unfortunate side effect to us starting at the NES is that a lot of NES games are that.
Yeah. Which
makes for kind of sometimes boring conversation, but I mean, it's the NES. It was a simpler time.
Well, thankfully, that's the last NES game we're playing that's like that too.
Yeah, the rest of them have like defined levels. They have a defined beginning and end. There are actual like this is the final level sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Ice Climber, I think you hit it on the head where you described it as this is a game designed for an arcade that never came out in an arcade.
Yeah, well,
versus Ice Climber did, but this was still, yeah.
Ice Climber did eventually make it to arcade in some form.
But, like, this original version was not an arcade game, but it's designed like one.
Yeah, and the arcade version of versus Ice Climber, Jesse actually told me about this earlier today. It was actually a substantively different game. Like it had new mountains, new songs, new hazards, a new enemy type. It was almost like a sequel to Ice Climber more than an arcade version.
Which, I mean, sounds interesting, and if I didn't hate this game so goddamn much, I'd give it a look. But I hate this game so goddamn much.
Oh, well.
I believe at one point you asked, did you write down your final high score, and do we care? And I said no, and I don't care. And then immediately followed it up with, my high score is, I don't have to play Ice Climber anymore.
That was a fairly good score.
I hate this game. I hate this guy. There was actually a point where I almost aborted the stream because I felt like I was getting too angry at this game.
Yeah, you get pretty heated at games.
I do. And that's not to say, like, usually, and I know some people have trouble realizing this, including my roommate, just because I get frustrated at parts of a game doesn't mean I dislike the game. But in this case, I hate this game.
Well, it's because the whole game is frustrating. There's nothing legitimately interesting about it.
Yeah, this is a game it wasn't built to be frustrating because this is just how video games were back in the day, but that doesn't change the fact that it's frustrating.
Yeah, and like, I'm saying something very specific when I say that there's nothing particularly noteworthy about it. There's nothing worth looking at in the game because it's just so much of the fundamentals of how the game works is unenjoyable. There is just not a game worth playing in there because the fundamentals of the controls they're in a way broken where
they don't work.
They work, they just don't work in a way that feels good. Like, they are perfectly consistent, and after a while you can start to get the rhythm down of it, but it just, isn't worth actually doing that, because you have to think so much about the actual jump that you're making, because the jumps don't work like real jumps do, and they don't work like video game jumps do. They're an entirely new and unique kind of physics, and it's not based on any intuitive logic, and so the process of doing the basic performance of jumping in this game is so much more complicated than it needs to be.
Yeah, and that's the real, that and the topies. I hate the topies. I hate them.
They are a design choice, to be sure.
Like, so here's the thing. The big issue with the topies is, sometimes the stage seems like it's designed so that, oh, I finally made a hole. Oh, but the topi spawned just now. Well, I guess I need to remake the hole. And also, the other half is, well, I guess I'll sit here and wait till the topi finishes building this bridge so I actually have room to maneuver.
Yep. And after a while, like, you figure out the process by which the topi spawns, the ice block, but it's like, it's so inconsistent in the matter of whether the topi is helping you or hindering you, and it never feels good in that regard. Like, it never feels like a topi hindering you is something that you really had a fair shot to plan around, because it happens so fast. But then a topi helping you takes so long that it doesn't feel good. Like, there's just so much downtime in between.
There were points in both of our playthroughs where we'd just have to sit there and wait until a topi finished, and it would take upwards of a minute for the damn thing to do it.
Yeah, and it's in that regard that I don't really know whether they were supposed to be a threat or a tool. And if they were supposed to be both, it wasn't balanced in any meaningful way. It was like, it almost seems like the topies were made to be frustrating whether they were hindering you or helping you. And that's one of the more frustrating things about them. That's one of the things that made them so unenjoyable. There was never a time where I felt like the topi added anything interesting. It only added things that were more upsetting.
And I mean, speaking of the other enemies, you have the Condor, which is apparently officially called the Nitpicker, which that's a stupid name, and I'm not calling them that.
It's the Condor.
But those enemies suck, and they spawn way too often.
Mm-hmm.
It does make sure that there's never more than one on screen, so they at least do that. At least as far as I remember, there were never two on screen.
That might just be because there couldn't be.
That probably. But, like, still, that worked in their favor.
Mm-hmm.
But they're still highly annoying. The game does not really feel like it is designed to work alongside them, because it's an enemy that comes down from out of your range in a vertically scrolling platformer.
Yeah, and the thing about, like, what your range is, like, they can simultaneously be too far away for you to hit them and too close for you to hit them, because of the way that your hitbox for your attack when you're jumping works. It just got so frustrating having to...
Did you ever figure out what the rules were for hitting while jumping?
I thought I did, but I can't really be certain, because it's like it was inconsistent in a way. I think, my best guess, that it has to do with the actual animation of raising the hammer into the air while you're jumping, but at the same time, there were some times where the hammer wasn't out yet, and I would still successfully do damage. So, I don't know. Who's to say?
And speaking of never really figured out the rules, the white bear, or the polar bear as everybody calls it because it's a polar bear, I think the most iconic enemy from Ice Climber, if you can call anything from this game iconic, because he's the only one that seems to really show up in Smash anymore. I think Topies show up on Icicle Mountain, but I don't remember.
Yes, they do.
Do they? Okay.
Well, they do in the adventure mode in Melee.
Ah, okay. But the polar bear shows up on the Summit stage. I believe he is also part of their Final Smash now. He just shows up on the iceberg.
I think so.
His purpose is supposed to be, if you're taking too long to go up, he will arrive and jump and it'll force the screen to move up. But there was one point where he came out for you and then nothing happened. He jumped and nothing happened.
Yeah, which someone, it might have been you, said that he has to, like, have a place for him to fall?
Because I thought it was that he has to fall down a layer, but then later on in your stream again, one made the screen go up without falling down. So I don't know what the rules are.
Who knows? Who knows?
But the bear, as we took to saying in the stream chats, in both stream chats, the bear giveth, the bear taketh away. Sometimes the bear will screw you over and you'll just die and you'll get a game over. Getting the bear on your last life is one of the biggest hindrances possible. But sometimes he'll raise the screen in a way so that Popo doesn't have a spot to spawn on the layer where you were, because that layer is gone. So you'll spawn up on a higher layer. And sometimes that was actually a big help.
Yeah. So thank God for that, I guess.
So he's kind of like the Topies in that regard.
I think he was helpful more often than he was hurtful, I guess.
For me, he was helpful a lot more often than he was hurtful, if I'm being honest, because he let me skip parts of the level.
The way that it happened for me was that if the bear did spawn, I was stuck. It was extremely rare for me to be stuck somewhere that the bear didn't end up, like, inadvertently saving me, which is weird.
There were points, for me at least, though, where he would spawn on a layer right as I got up on that layer, and you can't jump over him, you can't walk through him, he just pushes you, and if you fall through a hole, you're just dead.
Yep.
Which was bullshit in multiple ways and happened to me multiple times. I think 3 or 4 times. But those are the enemies. And then after you complete a regular mountain, you do the bonus stage, which you completed 1, right?
Yes.
Yes, you completed 1. I completed 4. I did get to a point where I stopped caring about picking up the vegetables and was like, I just want to see if I can make it to the end. I don't care about my score. I'm going. And that might be why I completed more, because I stopped giving a shit about picking up the vegetables. I will say that one of my favorite moments from your stream came from a bonus stage, which was you seeing an eggplant floating in the air and proclaiming, that is a trap. I am not going for that eggplant. That is a complete trap. Skipping it, getting almost to the top, threading the needle between 2 platforms because jumping an ice climber is terrible and Popo's hitbox makes no sense. Grabbed the eggplant as you fell to your death.
Yep.
And the bonus stage was over.
Yep. The hitbox for picking up the eggplants as well is also exceedingly frustrating and does not work the way that it should.
The hitbox for anything does, because like the hitbox seems to be like a Toho game where the hitbox itself is in the center of Popo.
Mm-hmm.
And nothing else.
And that's not the worst thing in the world, I guess. It's just,
for this kind of game, it's not great.
With platforming that is so demandingly, like, you have to be so precise, it doesn't it's frustrating. That's an extra layer of precision that you have to account for. And it just ends up being too much.
I want to point out that this is the first 2D game I've ever played where I can use the word clipping, because that's honestly what it felt like. Like you would clip straight through platforms if you weren't in the exact right pixel that it wanted you to be in.
Yeah.
And it was so... Platforming in this game is so frustrating. It's a platformer where platforming feels bad.
Which is... like, that's the whole thing there. Like, the point of the game is so undercut by that.
And, like, this was explained to us multiple times. This game came out in January of 1985, which means technically it did come out before Duck Hunt, but we're only going by year and not exact month for our order. Year and then alphabetical order after that. So this game did come out before Super Mario Brothers. In fact, on the Wikipedia article, I'm reading now that it was the first video game programmed by Kazuaki Morita, and he considered Ice Climber to be a warm-up before becoming a main programmer on Super Mario Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
This was his warm-up game before he went and made the platformer that fixed all platformers forever.
Yeah. Which, it cannot be understated, like, how much that really made a difference in the end. Because it's so incredible how much of a huge difference there is between Ice Climber and every other platformer afterwards. Like, Mario Brothers set the rules for platformers and, like, what good platformer design is. But I also don't really think that it's fair to give Ice Climber credit in that regard, because just because something is just the way it was doesn't mean it's good.
And I don't think there's anybody that would call Ice Climber a good game by any stretch of the imagination. I know there are some people that believe it should be held to the merits of its time. Our friend Jesse is one such person. And that outlook has merit, I think, of judge it by how video games were at its time. But, like, I can't do that. I can't put myself in the mind of, well, let's pretend it's 1985 and this is just how video games are. I've played good platformers, and therefore Ice Climber is frustrating and bad.
Yes. And I just can't really recommend it to anyone at any point in the year 2018. There's no real reason to play it.
Yeah, it's not. It's not.
Like, Duck Hunt at least had going for it the gimmick of the zapper, which I still think is cool to this day. And if you ever get the chance to play with the zapper, go for it. That's honestly really cool. But Ice Climber has nothing going for it that hasn't been completely superseded by games afterwards.
Yeah, it's... I don't know, man. And there are platformers that are purposely obtuse, like, that are considered classics. Like, Castlevania has weird jump physics, but it's designed around that, and Ice Climber doesn't feel like it's designed around its bad jumping. It just feels like they made a vertical platformer and then programmed the jump and said, alright, yeah, cool, call it a day. We're good.
Yeah.
Bye.
And it's too much. It just never really comes together in a satisfying way.
Yeah, it's... I hate this game. I don't think there's much more to say about it other than the music's not terrible. Other than one thing, which was the jingle that starts the mountain is pretty bad. But then you have, like, the regular stage music, which is repetitive, yes, but, like, it's an NES game. What are you gonna do? That's how NES music is.
Yeah, it doesn't really need more than just that one song, I think. I think that's fine for a game of this scale.
And then you've got the bonus stage music, which is, of course, the Ice Climber music that we all know because it's the most used song in Smash.
Mm-hmm.
I love its renditions in Smash. I mainly love the rendition that came out of Brawl. And then you have, of course, the ending jingle, the jingle that plays when you complete a bonus stage successfully, which, of course, we all know as it became the Ice Climber's victory jingle in Smash as well.
And I think some of the songs that are pulled from Smash are also from Versus Ice Climber, because there are parts of like the Melee Ice Climber theme that obviously are from NES Ice Climber, but I think also some of them I can't place off the top of my head because that's the song that plays on Icicle Mountain in Melee cycles between two melodies. One of them is very clearly the main melody from Ice Climber. The other, I don't think I can really place. I don't know where it's from, so I assume it's got to be from Versus Ice Climber.
Yeah. And it does say that Versus Ice Climber did get more music, it got more mountains, it added more enemies, and replaced the Condor with a giant butterfly on the new mountains.
Yeah, so it's very incredibly possible that Versus Ice Climber was taken into account for Smash Brothers as well.
Very much. And this is all to say, there were multiple times where I joked that playing this game made me wish that the Ice Climbers weren't in Smash, but I don't mean that. I love the Ice Climbers in Smash. I think they're a fantastic character idea. They're super fun to play as. I just really like them, and it's a shame that their game is so bad and that them being in Smash is the only reason anybody talks about it.
Well, ultimately, though, too, it's like the reason that they're notable in Smash doesn't even really come from Ice Climber.
It just comes from there's a two-player mode.
Yeah, there are two of them in the game, but that's not particularly different from any other game in Smash that happens to have a co-op mode. So I'm not really sure like where that idea came from, except just to give the character a gimmick. And like you can see where a couple of their moves that did make it into the game come from, but it's still weird that they have that gimmick going on because it's just got nothing to do with the game.
I mean, I'm glad they do. It makes them very fun and interesting to play as. So,
yeah,
at the very least. And it was probably just that. Sakurai was probably like, we can't just put this Eskimo-looking character in Smash because they're not going to be interesting enough on their own. What if we added a second one that's an AI-controlled partner?
Yeah.
And
which, I mean, I
worked out.
Just Popo could be a kind of interesting character. Not anything particularly special, but it's not a bad character by any means.
And it's also very interesting. I'm just now realizing that their ice throw attack, they're just throwing with the topies push forward.
Yes.
I'm just now realizing this somehow.
Oh yeah, I think Jesse pointed that out in the Twitch chat last night too.
That's kind of cool. I will give them that. But yeah, I don't think there's anything else to say about Ice Climber. I give it an I hate it out of 10.
It's not worth playing.
It's
don't
absolutely
recommend it.
not worth playing. I would never recommend this game even to my greatest enemies. Well, maybe to my greatest enemies. Maybe. But anyways, should we go ahead and talk about our next game on the list?
Sure thing.
Let's talk about Kid Icarus.
Kid Icarus, from what I understand, is kind of polarizing in a way. It's a game that is not bad inherently, but it's obtuse, and that turns a lot of people off.
So, I have been doing research on Kid Icarus since I finished Ice Climber, because I want to be prepared, because this game seems like it's going to be weird, and it's going to be rough. Not in the same way that Ice Climber is rough, because I have tested out a little bit. I've played it as a teenager. I don't think it's bad controlling.
The layout and the game design are weird. They're tough to kind of wrap your head around. And I'm wondering how much it really, like, the more obtuse parts of it really matter. Like, can it just be played straight as a typical platformer without a lot of thought?
So when you say obtuse parts, I should probably explain what that means. In my research, I have come across that in Kid Icarus, there are in fact stats, which I did mention briefly that I had been told this in episode 0. But here are the 4 stats. One of them I would even hesitate to call a stat, but we'll just count it for now. And that one is score, which is just your aggregate score from the entire game. Score helps you upgrade your endurance, which is your health. And then you've got skill, which helps you upgrade your strength, which is just how much damage you do with each arrow. And skill is where it's going to get kind of iffy, because skill is a completely invisible stat that you cannot keep track of in any way, and nearly everything in the game affects your skill stat.
We're gonna see. I don't think we should speculate too much of it before we play. I think we should just let the game end up speaking for itself and see how it fares.
Yeah, and I personally think that this is going to be a really rough stream, especially for me. I did a quick test run just to sort of get my bearings real quick yesterday, and I couldn't make it past stage 1-1, and I tried 5 times. So,
God bless.
It's going to be interesting. But, yeah, that should do it for a preview. Where can people find your stuff, Matt?
You got me on the Twitch, twitch.tv/Grimace the Menace. My Twitter, Grimace Do Menace, because there's not enough characters in Twitter to actually have a full Grimace the Menace. It's just barely too short. Very unfortunate.
One single letter short.
That happens a lot. Like, that specific number happens a lot. I had to do that for Overwatch as well.
You can find me on Twitch at Detective Dobaga. That is Dobaga. I will probably be streaming Kid Icarus sometime either this weekend or near the middle of the week next week. I don't really have a set date in mind for when I'm going to play. I also might stream something non-Smashterpieces related at some point soon. I don't know what. Maybe get back to Enhanced Rants. I don't know. We'll see. You can find me on Twitter at TheDebaga. You can also find the show itself on Twitter now. We have a Twitter account at Smashterpieces.
Hooray! And it's going to be, based on what we've seen so far, it's going to be really obvious to tell who's posting what.
And we've got a Facebook page as well, which you can follow us on Facebook. That is, again, at Smashterpieces. Give us a follow. Give us a like. And also, please review and rate the show on your podcatcher of choice. It would really help us get out there. Tell your friends. Tell your family. Tell your dog.
Get that search engine optimization going.
Yeah. We're going to research SEO until the night is done. That sounded more verbose in my head. Anyways, with that, I'm Joe.
And I'm Matt.
We'll see you next time for Kid Icarus.
Yeah.